As was said on Sunday, it will have been noticed that oftentimes after the stories, a question will be posed, or a conundrum, or enigma, or a riddle created. And it can be said that the reason for this is to allow us the possibility of experiencing that our responses no longer come from a place of machination of the mind, but from a place that perhaps for the moment can be called knowing. So again, this possibility is created with several simple old stories. The first is that story about the one who was called Akbar. Akbar was born as a slave into slavery, but he came under the notice of the great king Harun al-Rashid, and after some while he became the closest advisor, much loved and revered by the king himself. But of course, in the court, there were many who were jealous of Akbar's position in the court, and they plotted to bring him down. So one day a deputation of them came to the king to say that they had noticed that every day Akbar went into a private room and the door was locked, but it was believed that he went into this room to count the treasures that he was stealing from the king's treasury. So, although Harun al-Rashid did not doubt his beloved Akbar, he gave orders to these advisors that they go and break down the door of this room to see what it contained. When they came back to the king, they were rather embarrassed, rather abashed, because all they found in that room was a pair of straw sandals and a rather ragged toga. So the king called Akbar to him and asked him the meaning of this. And with tears in his eyes, Akbar said, "You have found my secret. Every day I go into this room to don the garb of the slave, so that I will always remember that I am where I am and who I am because of you." The second story is that story of a young man who was born as the son of one of the greatest Sufi teachers of the time. Now, not only was he a great teacher, but it was known that many of his students became great teachers in their own right. Now this boy, of course, was privy to all his father's teachings, in fact all his father's knowledge, sitting in from the youngest age. But then one night the young man had a dream. He dreamt that with his father he went to the celestial realms, and there in those celestial realms there was a gathering of the greatest of saints. But in his dream he experienced that his father was admitted to the gathering, but he himself was left outside. In the morning, he went to his father with a great deal of embarrassment to ask what was the meaning of this dream. And his father told him, "You have yet one great lesson to learn." So the son said, "Well, father, will you teach me this lesson?" And his father said, "No, I cannot do so. You must go to another." And his father said to him, "Go to such and such a man." Now this man was recognized and known by the son as a peasant farmer who had come under the tutelage of his father and now had become a teacher to other peasants, to other people of low standing, so called. And the son wondered why he had to go to such a being as this, who was known to be illiterate, have no great knowledge as such. But obeying his father's wishes, he set out to find this man. And as he was walking the road to where it was known he lived, the man himself, riding his horse, came along the road in the other direction. Immediately he was recognized, and the son, as was required of the culture, bowed his head in obedience to the man on the horse. And the man on the horse said, "Not enough." So the young man bowed his upper body from the waist down, and again it was said, "Not enough." So lowering himself even further, the young man got down on his knees, and the response was, "Not enough." And so the young man bowed to the very hooves of the horse on which the man rode. And again the response was, "Not enough." Only when the young man put his head on the earth, the dust under his feet, that the man on the horse bid him to arise and said to him, "You have learned your lesson. Now return to your father." What is the difference between these two stories? What arises for you, no longer coming from the movement of our mind in its ways of analysis, drawing on experiences or knowledge, but coming from a place that we can now call knowing. What is the difference, or even the similarity, between these two stories for you?
similarities that the first one had to go back to what he was, which was a slave, to find his true self. And in the other one, he had to go back to what he was originally, so that he also could find himself and not lose track of who he was.
Yes.
It's also like one had the wisdom to stay humble his way, and the other had to be humbled.
So what is this knowing? Is it a place?
It's almost like a living thing, isn't it? So I didn't even know you guys would be here today. I just knew you had to come. It's something you don't kind of think about or argue with. It just...
No. And could it be said that every experience we have poses some kind of riddle or conundrum or enigma for us? And our responses, we now recognize, don't just come from reading their body language or feeling they're energetic, but our responses come from something else. Even though those three levels of life that bring us awareness are still there for us. And yet our response does not come from a summation of those three, as would have happened before. Our responses come from this that's for the moment called knowing. Isn't it so for you? Are you recognizing now that even though we have those levels of awareness that come together, yet our responses come from somewhere else, not as a summation of that awareness. What's your experience? What is this place? Thank you.